Everyone, my name is Rajni and welcome to SCube TV. Today I have with me a very special guest joining us from Massachusetts, US, and his name is Jonas Kane. He is an author, a magician, and also a speaker. Well, he's more than that, and we are going to talk to him about his journey, about the bundle of talent that he is. But before that, let's welcome him to SCube TV. Hi, Mr. Jonas. Welcome to SCube TV. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Rajni. Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good too. Thank you.
Wonderful.
And it's a pleasure having you on the show because obviously you are, like I said, you're a bundle of talent. And with that, I also would like to like you to also talk more about you being a speaker, author, a magician, and you actually added something else to that, before the interview that we were talking about. So if you can talk about that too.
I'd I'd be happy to. Where should we begin?
Wherever you want and however you want.
Okay, yeah. So I'll start from where I am today, and then maybe we can retrace our steps. So today, I am an author, a speaker, a magician, musician, adventurer, and one of the questions becomes, how do all these things fit into one person? How do all these different things come into just sort of like one box of a person? And really, it comes down to what I think of as the inner and outer purpose. We all have these two purposes. We oftentimes ignore the inner purpose in favor of the outer purpose of what we do to express who we are. But the inner primary question of who we are should really be answered first, because then that will inform all these other things that we do. Like for me, I express it through doing speaking engagements, doing professional development workshops, keynote presentations. I answer it by doing magic tricks, doing different sort of things to excite the eyes and inspire fascination. And I also use it through music. I use music often in my presentations. And all these questions about why I do these things can be answered by addressing that inner purpose question. I can answer that really through a magic trick. We often spend so much time thinking about what we do on the outside that we ignore who we are in the inside. However, what we do on the outside should really be informed by who we are on the inside. Because when we do this, then regardless of what we may be doing in this life, regardless of what happens to us, it will always have a perfect fit within who we are, so we can live an authentic, purpose-driven life. So Rajni, the question becomes, how might we be able to really express who we are through what we do? That is the ultimate question. And I've answered that by doing magic tricks, by playing music, by doing speaking engagements. And it all comes down to that inner primary question. As children, there's two questions on our parents' mind and on our teacher's mind. These are the two big questions. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And then we answer that. And once we figure out what we're going to do, when we become adults and we're doing what we do, what's one of the first questions we ask people when we meet them for the first time? What's one of the questions we ask? Well, what do you do? This is what I
Yeah.
do. What do you do? So of course, these are the things we're going to think about when that is what is constantly being asked of us and what we're focusing on. So for me, what it's come down to, I really got my start with magic. That really started me off when I was 5 years old. I was a terribly shy child. I wouldn't even speak to anyone. I was just very, and when I did speak, I had such a severe stutter that I really couldn't communicate. So when I saw magic, when I experienced magic for the first time, that I became fascinated with it, because here are these grown adults doing what no one is supposed to be able to do. And as a child who couldn't even communicate with the world, I became fascinated with magic. So learning magic became my doorway to communicating with others, because in order to perform magic, you need an audience.
Yeah.
You can't perform magic with no one. You need to have someone there. So really, that is what got me started with magic. That's not what kept me in magic, and that's not why I do magic today, but that is what got me started.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. I mean, that's really amazing. And also, you have given this excuse me, this beautiful introduction of yours, and and about all the talents that you have. So with this, I also would like to know how actually you you happen to be this person that you are today. I mean, if you can talk a bit about your journey, as in like you mentioned that you got fascinated with magic when you were 5 years of old age. So with this, about about you being an author and speaker, magician, and that adventure part of yours, so how did
Mhm.
you explore that in yourself, if you can talk about that journey?
I would be glad to. In fact, what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about my first book. It's called "It Just
Oh.
Happened the Other Day: A True Story," and
Uh-huh.
I wrote this book in 2010. And actually, I have to tell you, January 4th, the day that we're doing this interview, is a very special day for me. January 4th of 2010, so this was 11 years ago, I had I call it sort of my rebirth. It was the rebirth of Jonas, because for the 3 years prior to that, between 2007 and 2010, I was in a severe depression. I went through a very dark place, and I didn't think I was going to come out of it. I literally thought I was going to die from a broken heart. And when I didn't die, I became so angry that I turned to suicidal tendencies. I became an alcoholic. I never had a drink in my life, and yet overnight, I gave up caring about life. Talk about having the spark of life just die out and vanish from our lives. That's really what I had gone through. And it was when so this book was supposed to be written by myself and a friend of mine. Her name is Stephanie Parker, and it was uh, 2007. We became engaged to be married, and we had known each other for 8 years. And I was always madly in love with her. We met in high school, and she was always adamant, "Oh, Jonas, we're just friends." And I would tell her all the time, "Well, that's fine, just as long as you're around. As long, that's good enough for me." But then fast forward 8 years, it was that summer of 2007, Stephanie came to me and said, Jonas, I'm in love with you too. It was the happiest moment of my life. It was everything that I ever wanted. I mean, I had the career of my dreams. I was doing magic shows full time. I had the woman of my dreams. Everything was going amazingly. And
And then
during that
magic
summer, we
happened. I'm sorry to interrupt, but and then
yeah,
magic happened in your real life too.
yes, yes, that's really how I described it to myself. The in my research that I've been doing over the past 10 years now, since January 4th of 2010, I've done a lot of research, and I've discovered that there are three primary pillars of positivity, which help us become more resilient through life's challenges. And it's having a positive mindset, having clarity of purpose, and having positive, high value relationships. In relationships, that is the key, because when all else fails, the relationships are what can help us get through difficult times. And so I literally experienced that magic of love, the magic of Stephanie finally coming around. And we decided that summer we were going to write this book. It just happened the other day, a true story. Because anytime Stephanie would tell a story, she would start off by saying, "Oh, it just happened the other day." Even if it happened weeks, months, or even years earlier, she would always, "Oh, it just happened the other day." And whenever I tell a joke, I often say, "Oh, it's a true story. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?" And then I'll just tell a joke, So it's just kind of silly. So we were going to call it "It Just Happened the Other Day, a True Story." Now, unfortunately, it was just 1 week after we had become engaged to be married just very suddenly, very unexpectedly, Stephanie died. She just didn't wake up one morning. It turns out later she had a blood clot. That's something, there's no warning for this. It can just happen at any time. We don't know when our time is going to come. So when she died on September 5th, 2007, I it was as if Stephanie was the magic. She was the real magic in real life. So when she died, it really took away the veil of the illusion of life, this illusion of these things that we buy into. And I saw life itself as this big lie, as this one big illusion, that, or more of a delusion. And when I didn't die from a broken car, it that was a very, to this day, that's the hardest thing I've ever gone through, to this day. And I thought I was going to die, and when I didn't, I turned to bad choices. And for 3 years, I went through this very dark time. But then I had convinced myself that on January 3rd, 2010, that I was going to die on that day. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I convinced myself because, when we're in a deep emotional place, logic has nothing to do with it. It's all the raw emotions. Now we can use our logic. Now it's interesting in the research I've done. When we are at our saddest moments, logic does kick in. We do become logical. It can sometimes be irrational logic, but we think it's logical. So I had done the mathematical equations, and I determined that on January 3rd, 2010, I would be the exact age that Stephanie was when she died. So I thought, how poetic that I should die at the exact time, at the exact age. But then when I didn't die, and then I woke up again on January 4th, 2010, I thought, well, maybe it's not a literal death, but it's the death of who I was, the death of the Jonas that's no longer serving me, the death of, of clinging onto the past, the death of clinging onto these illusions. And so that's why I count January 4th as my rebirth. That was the beginning of the rest of my life. And you know how on Facebook they show the Facebook memories, and today when I woke up, I saw the Facebook memory. There was a post from January 4th, 2010, and it said, "Today is my first day." And so today is a very special day for me. I count this, I'm 11 years old today. I've been on this path for 11 years. And when during that rebirth, refiguring out life again, what's it about? I turn to that question of, who is Jonas? What's Jonas's role in life? What purpose do I serve? If it's not what I thought it was, well, what is it? It could be anything. And really, everything in life, it's whatever we ascribe to it. It's whatever we choose to be responsible for. What I've chosen to be responsible for is to help people survive, help people smile, and help people thrive. Everyone is somewhere within there. Some people are at their end of the rope, like I was, and they've forgotten their value. They've forgotten how important they are. They've forgotten that they matter. Some people don't have a reason to smile. So that's where jokes and magic and even music comes in to help people smile. And the thriving comes in. Well, maybe they do know they matter. Maybe they have reasons to smile, but now, and they have this burning passion, but they have this burning passion to do something significant with who they are. So I can help them do that. So everything that I do, that's where the magic in the music, in the writing. I've written 9 books since then. And my favorite book, aside from my first one, is this one here. It's called Are You Positive? Rethinking Positive Thinking. And this book has really been the culmination of all the research that I've done over the past now 11 years on how to think, be, and stay positive. even through difficult times. Uh, so that's really the genesis story of where I came from and how I came to be doing all these different things.
Wow, I mean, that's that's hell of a story, and that's an amazing, amazing, inspiring story that you have. Because like you said, that 4th January is the date when you actually had, I can count it as a rebirth.
Mm,
So
yes.
yeah, I mean, that's a really inspiring story. But here, before I ask you about your profession and magic and all that things, I would like to ask about, the mental state that you were in. So a lot of people in these times, especially in the lockdown time, also are going through a lot of phases like these. They are dealing with this, mental issues and mental health problems, depression, anxiety, and a lot of things. So when you went through that part of your that time of your life, so I mean, I know it must have been really, really hard for you to come out of that time and come out of that zone. But what was that something that that made you hang on, and that made you um to not quit, or to
Mm.
still be this happy person that you are able to be today?
That is such an important question and a loaded one. And I will give you my answer, but I will also preface it by saying everyone's answers is going to be different. Um, However, going back to the research that I've done, so what when I did come out on the other side of grief, and I realized that I had gone through this metamorphosis, so to speak. I had gone through this major change at the basic level. I went through a period of change, and I became fascinated by the to understand the process of change, to understand how I was able to go through it, but also how other people go through similar changes. And there's so many different spectrums of change. I mean, in every moment we're changing. In every moment, there's this wonderful quote by the ancient Greek philosopher named Heraclitus. And the way that he phrased it was, and I'll paraphrase, was no person can step in the same river twice, because it's not the same river and it's not no longer the same person. Everything is in flow, everything changes. So I became fascinated by understand the process of how people change. So so one thing that really helped me is I keep an extensive journal, and I have a whole stack of journals over here dating back from when I was, you know, 10 years old. I've been keeping extensive journals, and I count that as a blessing that I started young, because really being able to, uh, it serves many purposes. One, just writing things out helps us process our thoughts, process our emotions, but then it also is wonderful to go back. And I don't go back often, but usually once a year or so, I'll go back to just crack open to see what I was thinking about. And it's very therapeutic to see things that mattered so much and seemed like it was the most important thing in the world were things that I no longer even think about, because in the grand scheme of things, there's always going to be something important. So for me, journaling has been a wonderful therapy for me. So that's helped a lot. Um, another factor, going back to those three pillars, so in my research over the past 11 years, I found that having a positive mindset, clarity of purpose, and high value relationships help us get through challenging times. So we can start with mindset. There's a few things that go into this. One of them is having this internal locus of control rather than an external locus of control. And basically what this means is we take responsibility for our experience of life. Instead of blaming outside circumstances for why our life is the way it is, we take responsibility of it. We take control over it. That said, there's a lot of things we can't control in life. There was one big study
Mhm.
done that showed 50% of our life is just completely out of our control because it's our DNA, it's our biology. We can't control who our ancestors were. That's just something we can't control. So there's certain biological factors that factor into our life. So 50% of our life completely out of our control. 10% we do have some influence over. It's where we live, it's the job that we have, it's our friends, it's the people we grow up with. We have some influence over this, but the remaining 40%, and this is the most encouraging part, Rajni, we have complete control over. In which is what is really the big game changer. If you're going through a challenging situation, no matter what it is, this can be a big game changer because 40% we have all this control over it. And it's our choices. It's how we choose to respond to the things that happen to us. And for 3 years, during my dark period, I was choosing to respond in a less than positive way, mostly because I didn't have the tools and resources available. I hadn't. They're just things that I didn't have to think of them, so I hadn't thought of them. But understanding that we have this level of control over our lives, if we can choose how to respond, it's like that idea: if someone strikes one cheek, turn the other cheek. If someone, we don't have to always respond by default. We can choose to respond by design. And that's what the internal locus of control, that's what this positive mindset is about. But it's also about having this positive growth mindset, understanding that our capacity is fluid. It's not a fixed mindset, but it's a growth mindset that we can learn new knowledge, we can gain new skills, because otherwise, if we have a fixed mindset, who we are today is all we'll ever be. But with a growth mindset, we can grow beyond where we are. And oh my goodness, when I look back to where I was through 2007 through 2010, if I had a fixed mindset, I would either still be in that dark place, or I would be dead by now. So having that positive mindset is one of the things that really helped me get through the initial bump. But I would also say another factor was the other pillar of relationships. Having positive people in your life, people who care about you, and people who you care about, because in times when times are good, they can help celebrate with us. In times of trouble, they can comfort us and help remind us that we do matter. And so I would say that those two things, positive mindset and positive relationships, were the two biggest influences to get me to the other side. But the thing that really helped me, now it's been 11 years, that has kept me on this side of grief. You know, oh my goodness, we all have bad days. Things happen. We run into speed bumps. I mean, in many ways, there was a lot of, for me personally and for the whole world, there was a lot of trouble in 2020. However, I count 2020 as one of my best years ever in many ways. And it's because of the other factor of clarity of purpose. So mindset and relationships got me over the hump, but purpose, having this passion, this drive of this internal purpose to strive for, that regardless of what's going on around me, I can still express who I am. And is what really helped me to sustain this over all these years.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. I mean, so you are basically you're suggesting here that no matter how, no matter the many people you have in your life, but you should at least have, you might have, few people, but they should be really close to you. They should have that love and care for you to take you out of, the bad times that you are in, if you are in your bad times.
That is so important. And, it's not only from my personal experience that I can speak to that, but there's been so many studies that have been done by different psychologists and scientists, that have really shown that having, having at least one person in your life who you can confide in. And I usually recommend having three different people. So having a peer, so someone who's of the same general, ability, knowledge level, having a peer. Also having a mentor, someone who is where you're striving to be. They've been where you are now, so it's someone who can give you advice, but also having someone that you also can help, someone that you can mentor as well. So having at least one person, but really if you can have at least one person in each of these three levels, I call this the relationship compass. So peers, mentors, and people who you mentor.
Wow, amazing. Amazing. So now I would like to come back to your magic. So, I would like to firstly ask you that so you got fascinated with magic when you were 5 years old. But, how did you train through magic, or it naturally came to you? I mean, the fascination naturally came to you, but the training that you went into, how did you get into that? And if you can talk about that.
Absolutely. And this also ties back to everything we've already talked about. So at first, when I was learning magic, it was just my parents would buy me a magic kit, or they would buy me a book, and I would read that and learn the tricks. But then over time, my father, it was probably when I was 11 or 12 or so, we started going to this local magic store, and that's where all the magicians from the area would convene. And my father and I would go every Saturday. We would stay from open till close. We would be there all day. And that's when I started to meet the other people in the area. And, I was by far the youngest one there, so, talk about mentors, here I was, this cute, adorable kid, and all these established professionals in the area would take me under their wing, and they would teach me the ways. They would guide me, they would direct me in the right direction of the type of magic that I should be looking at based on who I am. So I count that time in my life, that was for a number of years. We did that. And so my father was a big supporter, and my mother as well. They were both very, very supportive. In fact, when I did my first magic show when I was 12, I did my first show. It was at my former elementary school. There was this it was a third grade event, so it was the entire third grade class, and I went back to do my first magic show for them. And my mother was my lovely assistant. She was the one who was helping me with all the magic. So my parents were very big supporters. And then fast forward several years, it was, those people who I had met at the magic store became my core tribe. They eventually became my peers. And so I grew up with them, learning from them, learning with them. And then it was in 2008. So interestingly, this was during my my dark time, and I could speculate as to the various reasons for why this one particular person, but this one person ended up stepping up. He was a member of the local magic club that I belonged to, and he saw my passion and my talent for magic, and he wanted to just give me a chance. Now I could speculate, maybe he also saw that I was going through a hard time and I was depressed, and he wanted to kind of zap me out of it. Who knows if that was part of it, but he ended up investing in me to send me to this group called the McBride Magic and Mystery School in Las Vegas. And the McBride Magic and Mystery School, it's the world's most prestigious magic school. Magicians from all over the world come to study at this school. So in
So it is
2000,
sounding like Howard's to me, but yeah, go on.
it's kind of like a real Hogwarts. It really is kind of like the
Yeah,
real.
sorry, Hogwarts. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and I grew up sort of, watching TV and watching these documentaries on different TV specials, with the instructors at this school. And then all of a sudden, here I am sitting next to these grand masters of magic. And it was just such an amazing, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It was such an amazing experience because this person believed in me, because this person, it's something I like to call, I often use this metaphor of a sailboat. And I think about the of mindset being like the boat itself. It helps to keep you from drowning. and then the sail helps give you direction, right? But then the relationship, that's the wind to put into your sails to move you forward. And this guy, his name is Ron, who invested in me. I had the boat, I had the sail, and he gave me a little push with the wind. And so I've been a member now of the McBride Magic community ever since. And it's just an amazing community to learn from and with.
Wow, amazing. So, you also have that personality. If when I'm talking to you and when I'm looking at you, you have that personality which actually would give smile to people. You have that vibe around you, which would make people happy. And, I think you are a kind of a person who would like to make people happy, who would like to give them a smile. So when I talk about, the kind of magics that you do, so, what are the kind of magics that you do, and why do you choose that particular kind of magic?
Yes, so that is such a great question because it goes back to something I originally said. There was the reason why I got started in magic, but then there's the reason why I stayed in magic. And it was during that transition period from when from January 4th, 2010 and forward. Um, in the early days of that time, I started to transition away from magic. And the reason was going back to the original thought that I had of how magic was this one big illusion, and how life itself was one big illusion, and it was this big lie. And I went through this kind of struggle with magic for a while, thinking that magic isn't something worthwhile, because it was this big lie. And so in the early days, I tried to get out of it, and it was that same year, 2010. I
Hmm.
wrote another book. So I had written this book first, and
Hmm.
then just months later, I wrote this one, Journey of Discovery: Awaken Your Inner Power. So whereas this book is more about the story, this book is more about the lessons that I learned from these stories. So I wrote this book to specifically teach at a leadership camp. And it was this group of high school students. They're all 16, 17-year-old students. And the workshop went well. It wasn't great, but it went well. The students who did show up, they enjoyed it. But I wouldn't say it was a grand slam. So I went back to the drawing board after facilitating this workshop that first year. I changed things up just a little bit. It was all the same content, but there's one thing that I added, and it made the difference between. I think I had maybe 5 people show up to the first class. By the next year, when I went back to facilitate the same class, it was standing room only. There were not enough seats to fit everyone in the room, so much so that we had to go outside. I had to do the class outside because there wasn't enough room for everyone who wanted in on it. And it was the same content, it was the same title, but the difference, Rajni, was that instead of just saying the description of the course, we're talking about positivity and all these things. I added one little sentence at the end of the description. I said, by the way, there will be a magic show.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, it was the magic that got them into the room. So the magic excited them. It got them excited. However, the magic it the magic wasn't just there as a way to excite them. It also served another purpose. The magic also illustrated the key principles that I was teaching in the class. So yes, at the start of every class, we would do magic. However, the magic would point to the lessons that we were learning that day. So they would get all engaged. They would get very excited. I would generate their interest during the magic, but then that would turn the interest, because interest can be temporary, it could be fleeting, but then it would turn into desire to learn more. So it was really, figuring out that I didn't have to abandon completely who I was. I didn't have to abandon magic, but magic it now had this. It was repurposed. It wasn't magic just to make people laugh and smile, which it still does. But magic can also serve another purpose of illustrating deep truths. So that's the magic
Okay.
that I do. It's educational magic.
Oh, okay, got it. So, when you talk about magic, so it shows that you have a great love and passion towards, towards magic and towards that. So, when I talk about the inspiration that you have in your life, so whom do you draw inspiration from? Who are those inspiring people or those people that you idolize in your life?
Yeah, there are so many people. When I think back to various places in my life, just in the world of magic, I can give you some examples to start. Some of my early inspirations was someone like David Copperfield. He was really my first big magician that I had seen, but also Lance Burton. He's now retired, but he had his own Las Vegas show, and he would do magic specials every year on TV stations. And then as I got older, another inspiration was Mac King, and he still is. Mac King. He still performs his Las Vegas show, and every time I go to Vegas, I go to see him, and it's just a comedy show. It's just a silly show, but I enjoy watching these masters at what they do because they have their lane. Even though their styles is completely different from my own, there's still lessons to be gained there about being in your lane, knowing what your character is, and just in honing it and owning it. And then in the world of speaking, I would say one of my biggest influences is John Maxwell. John Maxwell, he's written, oh my goodness, countless books. Most of them have become New York Times bestsellers. He is a sought after speaker. I remember the first time I had heard him speak. It was in 2010, so it was in the time just after that rebirth of Jonas. I discovered a speech of his on a CD, and I must have wore out that CD because I listened to it over and over and over again. He's just such an engaging communicator, not just his content of what he's speaking about, but the way that he talks. So when I decided to transition from being a magician to being a speaker and a facilitator, one of the first things I did was John Maxwell has a speaker training program. So I signed up for his program. How better to learn from the people who you respect the the most. So I start every day by listening to a lesson from this mentor, someone I've only actually met once. I've only met him once, but he's such a big part of my life because I've really learned a lot from him.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Someone whom you get inspiration from, and you are learning from him, and he is actually becoming a teacher to you. I mean, what can be better than that? So that's really amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so now, yeah, please.
I just want to say that there's one other huge inspiration, and I would be
Yeah.
I would be awful to miss him. And it's someone who I've only just recently discovered over the past couple years, Dr. Rick Hansen. And he's a psychologist, but he really informs a lot of the research that I do. So a lot of the research and the principles and practices for thinking, being, and staying positive that I teach, a lot of it comes from his research. So I would be remiss if I missed sharing him. So Dr. Rick Hansen, you should check him out.
Okay. Okay, sure. We'll surely do that. Okay. So now, when I talk about magic to you, so magic is also like an art. So like, like painting or acting and all these things, like singing. So you yourself are a musician. So, so magic is also like an art. So, art needs a lot of practice and a lot of patience and a lot of things like other arts. So when I talk about, improving in your art, getting better day by day, so when I talk about that, so how do you practice your art? I mean, how do you make your magic new every day? Or, how do you make how do you make it new, and also how do you not make it stagnant and boring at the same time? It just don't get repeated same time. I don't know if I'm using the right word or not, but I hope you're getting what I'm trying to say here.
I I do, and you bring up some excellent points that not a lot of people would know to ask. So that is a very insightful question that you asked, and I have three things to say about this. Number one is there's a book called it's on my bookshelf somewhere, but it's by Jay Sankey. He's this Canadian magician, phenomenal performer, very creative thinker, and it's a book called Beyond Secrets. And I think that's what it's called, Beyond Secrets. And there's no like secrets. You're not going to learn any magic tricks in this
Mm-hmm.
book, but what you do learn is how to present your magic. So it's a lot of theory, a lot of philosophy. So it's one of my favorite books on the topic of magic, even though you don't learn anything about magic tricks. And one of the things that he talks about in the book is the idea of a magic performance. It's kind of like you're conjuring a ghost. And what he means by this is when you practice, you're trying to get it as perfect as you can, and then you bring it to your audience, and now you're trying to conjure the ghost of what you did in the workshop to present it. But you also, especially if you've been doing the same routine or the same act for years, if not decades, because now I've been doing magic for over 30 years, and some of the magic I have been doing all along throughout all these years, even though they do evolve over time. Uh, the idea is you're trying to conjure this ghost, creating the illusion of the first time, because it can be very easy to sort of just go through the motions, just like you said. How, instead of it's easy for it to be stagnant. I've actually seen one of my idols, and I almost don't want to say this because in case he stumbles upon this, but I'm going to say it. I once saw David Copperfield, and I've seen him live probably 4 or 5 times. And the last time I saw him was in his home theater. This was a little over a year ago, just before the lockdown. I saw him in his home theater, one of the best magic shows I've ever seen, if not the best magic show. But years earlier, I saw him do his touring show, and I don't know, it seemed like he was phoning it in. it just seemed like it seemed like he had just pressed play, and it didn't matter who was in the audience. It could have been anyone. But here's the thing: we all have those days. We all
Yeah.
do. I've had those days. So to answer your question, how to keep it fresh? I mean, going back to Jay Sankey's idea of resurrecting the ghost, creating the illusion of the first time. So being conscious of that, being aware of the tendency to do that is what I learned from him. But there's this other book. It's called Tangled Web by Eric Mead, and also one of my favorite books that I've ever read. This one does have some actual magic tricks in it, but it's also a lot of heavy on the theory and philosophy. Sadly, I have no idea what happened to this book. I can't find it on my bookshelf anywhere. I must have given it away or something, but it's out of print, so you really can't find it anywhere unless you spend like thousands of dollars. But his idea was to keep magic alive. His thing that he says is to say something with your magic. And that was a huge influence on me, because a lot of magicians, they think it's just about the trick. They think it's just about, putting one box inside of another box. They think that it's about, making the bottle appear right side up. They think that's the trick. But really, the real magic is, what is the magic saying? A song isn't just a song. The song tells a story. A movie isn't just a movie. The movie tells a story. A painting tells a story. A sculpture tells a story. Magic, real magic, tells a story. Now, the question is, are we aware of what that story is? Or is the story just happening by default, and we're not really cognizant of it. So one way to keep magic alive is to take a bold stance. I mean, it doesn't have to be a political stance. It doesn't have to be, divide the audience, but, to say something. And that's really what my magic has done over these past 11 years is I've taken a stance. My magic is about something. It says something. So it's about developing a positive mindset. It's about developing clarity of purpose. It's about developing high value relationships. So by infusing these deeply important stories and meaning behind it, and because it's so deeply important to me, but it's also a universal thing, that's one way to keep the real magic alive. Now, another way, so there's being aware, and then there's consciously saying something important. But the other thing that I'm going to share with you is there's this one magic trick, and I'd like to perform this for you if I may. May I perform a
Of
trick for you?
course, of course. Yeah.
This, and here's the thing. I always get nervous when I do this one because it literally took me over 30 years to perfect. And I'm not even going to say it's perfect yet. I'm still honing it. It's the Rubik's Cube.
Hmm.
So in one way, we say, well, this is just a puzzle. But really, isn't magic kind of like a puzzle? And isn't life a lot like a puzzle? It's a puzzle to be solved, but it's also a puzzle to enjoy the process of figuring it out. It took me 30 years to be able to do what I'm about to show you. And I'm going to explain how I hone this so I can do this seemingly out of
Oh my
no.
goodness. Did you really do it in seconds? I think it took you 3 or 4 seconds.
Now, I really did solve it. However, what I'm about to tell you will sort of take the wind out of the sails a little bit, because the question becomes now, could I still do this if you mixed the cube? Because I was the one
Okay.
who mixed the cube just now, but what if you mixed the cube for me? Could I still do it? The answer is yes. However, it would probably take me a little longer than 3 seconds. I'm going to tell you how I learned this. So for the first 29 years, I avoided the Rubik's Cube because it was difficult, it was hard, I couldn't figure it out, so I thought it was beneath my dignity as a human person. I just didn't give it the time of day. However, when I was just after my 30th birthday, I decided, it's not even really a decision, it was just sort of a realization. I thought, well, just because something is hard, that doesn't mean we should avoid it. It just maybe means we have to maybe try a little harder, or maybe we have to try another way. So during that time in my life, I started to revisit a few things. One of the things that I revisited was in my earlier years, I had dropped out of college for various reasons. But I decided, well, I'm going to finish what I started. So I ended up enrolling back in school to finish my undergrad. And another thing that I did was I decided to revisit the Rubik's Cube. And I spent years working on solving this Rubik's Cube. But just like anything big, you don't just start off by diving headfirst into it. For example, if you wanted to become a runner, you wouldn't start off by running a marathon. If you wanted to become a bicyclist, you wouldn't start off by riding 3,000 miles across the country. You start small. You start
Hmm.
small. So that's what I did. I started small. Now this is a regulation style cube, but it's just an adorable size. So I literally practiced small. In the real reason I did this is that it fit in my pocket. So everywhere I went, I could solve this cube, and it took me took me several years, but I finally did eventually get it. So much so that I can now solve this cube on command. Now, obviously, I can't just hand this to you, Rajni. However, what you can do is tell me how you want me to mix it. We have a top and a bottom, a front and a back, and there's
Hmm.
your left and yeah, that's your left and your right. So you could tell me to turn it once, twice, or 3 times. Now, if you tell me to turn it a fourth time, it just brings it back to normal. So you can name a side and a number between 1 and 3. We'll do this several times. And so you will really mix up this cube all by yourself with my help, of course. So where should we start?
Okay, so we can start it on the right side.
On the
We can
right
turn,
side.
yeah. So we can turn it two times.
1 and 2. Let's do another
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. Now the left side,
Yep.
and we can turn it four times.
1, 2, 3. Well, 4 times,
Okay,
brings it
then
down.
then three times.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3. All right, let's do another side.
Then the center one, and we can just turn it one side, one time.
Okay.
Yeah,
And now
perfect.
let's do another one. Let's do another one. Let's do one more.
All right. The top one, the top
Yep.
side. Yeah, we can do it three times.
1, 2, 3. Now it is legitimately mixed. What I'm going to do now is close my eyes and just turn it
Uh-huh.
randomly. You just tell me to stop at any point.
Okay. Okay, you can stop.
Right there? Are you happy there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now think about this. You told me to mix it however you wanted it mixed. And then with my eyes closed, I just turned it at random. This is a legitimately mixed cube. I will
Yeah.
tell you, it will take me longer than 3 seconds to solve this. And I'll also have to use two hands. If you have a watch with a second hand or maybe a phone with a stopwatch, I encourage you to keep track of the time.
Okay.
On, on the average day, it takes me about 75 seconds. However, on a great day, I can solve this in a minute or less. So we're going to find out if it's just an average day or if it's a
Mm-hmm.
great day. As soon as you say start, we're going to
Okay.
begin. So when should I begin?
Start.
Now I'll tell you how it is that I do this. I keep 10 Rubik's Cubes on a desk in my office. And every day, what I do, I start my day by solving all 10 of those cubes. So
Mm-hmm.
talk about keeping it fresh. This is legitimately a challenging trick to do because the trick to it is practicing every day. Da-da. Okay, and you can stop. How far do we get?
I think it's 1 minute.
Oh my, so it's not, but you know what? That's close enough to a great day. Rajni, take a look. I've solved the Rubik's Cube. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I really don't know what to say.
Oh, okay. I sense a little confusion here.
Yeah.
Let me explain. We were
Okay.
we started this whole conversation about the magic, about how to keep it fresh, how to keep things exciting rather than being stagnant. Here's the
Uh-huh.
thing. Most people will solve the cube by putting all the greens on one side or all the reds or all the blues on one side. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just one of the possible solutions. There are a total of I think it's 43 quintillion different combinations that you can make using the Rubik's Cube. That's the number 43 with 18 zeros after it. If you had a regular size cube rather than a mini size cube, if you had a regular size cube for every possible color combination that you can make with the cube, it would fill the Earth's surface 275 times. That's a lot of cubes, and some might say you don't even need that many. Some may even say one is enough. So what I do to make it interesting, to not get stagnant, is I decide on a new combination and I solve it for that combination. And this is the color combination that I decided to solve. However, I didn't decide on this color combination today. I decided on this years ago when I first started solving the cube. When I first started, I decided to always solve it the same way.
Okay. Wow.
Every
That's
side of the coin.
amazing. Now I get it, and that's incredible. That's amazing. Wow.
Took me over 30 years to figure
Wow.
out how to do this.
I mean, that's
So
amazing.
the lesson is just doing what's expected is good enough, but doing more than expected will always be where a personal best is found. Thank you.
Okay. Amazing, amazing. I mean, I should really clap for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we are done with the time, but still, before I let you go, I would like to ask you something about, your life outside magic, if you can talk about that too.
Yeah, so one of the things I do outside of magic is I climb mountains, and this is me on top of Mount Adams in Washington State, the second highest peak in Washington. Standing on top of this mountain, if it's not a cloudy day, you'll see Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens. So there's several peaks in this area. And the reason I do these expeditions are really for two reasons. Number one is, you know, it challenges my assumptions about myself. I didn't grow up being a mountaineer. It's not something I naturally find enjoying. It's actually very difficult, but I see it as training to volunteer to get into a difficult situation. It trains me for when difficulties are just thrown at me against my will, such as a pandemic, or losing clients, or personal challenges. Be going through these difficult times when I volunteer for it makes it far easier when times are tough against my will. But the other reason I do this is I don't do this alone. I go with a group of people called Climb for Hope. And what Climb for Hope does is they climb mountains, they go on these expeditions to raise money for immunotherapy research, which helps people who are suffering from MS and certain types of cancer. And my father died from cancer. It was 7 years ago this year. And so I summited this mountain on the 5th year anniversary of his passing. So I climb to keep his memory alive. I climb to help alleviate the suffering of others, because that really speaks to my inner purpose. It may not be a magic trick, but I like to think of it as the real magic in life.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Jonas. You are an amazing person, and you are that amazing inside out. You're inside out an amazing, amazing person. And so keep being that. And thank you so much for coming to SQ TV and speaking with us. It was so lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much.
You're so much. It's been a joy being here. Thank you for having me, Rajni.
Thank you.